Tonight, we're talking some big moves from the ballot box to the blue line. Electoral reform again heating up. The major parties have dropped their price-tagged promises, and Canadian snowbirds are swapping sun for snow. Plus, we'll finish strong with your NHL playoff fix. Buckle up. This is where opinions fly faster than slap shots. From Montreal, this is Night Talk, episode 30. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And as usual, 4 floors up from Gary, this is Eddie Takalik in Montreal.
Nice to have you back in the home city. Before we get started, a reminder, we want your input on any or all of tonight's topics. Post your comments and we will feature and respond to as many as possible. Well, reform was one of the key promises made by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau when he formed government 10 years ago. Remember him? It very quickly was pushed to a shelf somewhere deep in Ottawa and not to be talked about at the government level again. But citizens groups have kept the flame alive, and one group, the Longest Ballot Committee, has been working to run record numbers of candidates in targeted ridings. The latest target is Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's Ottawa area riding, where the ballot is a meter long with 91 names on it. Don't believe me? Well, we do have a little something to show you of that ballot. Here we go. The picture on the left is a friend of ours who actually lives in the riding and could not believe when she went in and picked up her ballot and unfolded it behind the screen. She had
Looks like they needed a longer table.
Yeah, it had to be folded like 6 times, I think. And then on the right-hand side is the Longest Ballot Committee's site on Blue Sky. And they put a banana along the side there to just give you some perspective as to how long the ballot is in comparison to an average banana.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable. Well, now, the other group is Fair Vote Canada, which is taking a much more refined approach to trying to abolish our first-past-the-post system, with most voting reformers favoring proportional representation. That's a system based on the number of seats a party wins, and it closely matches the percentage of the total votes it receives. So instead of a winner-takes-all approach like first-past-the-post, proportional representation aims to reflect the will of the voters more accurately by allocating seats based on proportional support. Well, Eddie, how do you feel about walking in to your polling station and all of a sudden being handed something like that?
Oh, wow. To tell you the truth, Gary, if I had walked up to my booth to actually place my hard-earned vote, if you want to call it, and be presented with, a folding piece of paper that's wider than my arm span, my wingspan, which is pretty big, I don't know what I would have said. I think I would have started to laugh and stuck my head up and say, "Are you guys for real?" You know what? Call me old-fashioned, but I understand protests, and I think they're making a very, very valid point. Don't get me wrong. But I think there is a place and time in how you conduct your protest work, and I'm not sure whether or not at a polling station is the right way to approach it. You make your point, and you should take the elections or portray the elections as extremely serious thing. You and I both in our lifetimes have gone through all sorts of protest parties. On this particular, I went to vote early, by the way. So the Rhinoceros Party was actually there. Okay, so to me, that's a good way to look at a political party that's a protest party. It's always been a protest party since day one. They're on the ballot, but to do something like that and inconvenience a voter, inconvenient. I mean, I would be able to go through the 80 and pick my candidate. But what about the folks that are seniors, the senior going to vote and being presented with this? I don't think it's a fair shake in getting the correct vote from the seniors when they're presented with something like this. And A, they may make a mistake and put their X in the wrong spot. B, they're going to be overwhelmed and basically say, I can't do this. And C, they can't ask anybody for help either. So I think it's the wrong place to do it, and the elections should be taken more seriously by these protest groups. And I don't think it should be at the ballot box, in my opinion.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Rhinoceros Party, because these guys are kind of like an offshoot of the Rhinoceros Party.
Are they?
Their whole goal is, they started a few years ago in, I think there was a provincial election. Anyway, their last two ventures, the first one was the Toronto St. Paul riding, that the Liberals, a safe Liberal seat that they lost in the by-election back in the summer, which was the beginning of the end for Justin Trudeau.
Right.
And then the other one was here in Verdun, the by-election we had back in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the fall or early?
Yeah, I think it was the fall. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and their goal is to have a ballot at some point with 100 people on. Now, I'm like you. There's protests, and then there is just plain foolery. And this is a cross between foolery and just plain asinine. Like, it's just, you're inconveniencing so many people and costing votes, because some people will just go in and say, yeah, okay, boom, and they'll do whatever to either spoil the ballot, or they'll vote, because some of these candidates, like a lot of these names, are ghost names. And the chief electoral officer for Canada has raised this point now a couple of times. And I saw a great comment, and I think it was by a PC supporter, either last night or one night. I was flipping through, I can't remember if it was X or Blue Sky or whatever. Anyway, he said, how about going back to the day when you had to put $1,000 down the pot, to show that you were serious about running.
Right.
And non-refundable deposit. Like, I just have a couple of reforms in my mind as far as voting is concerned in this country. First of all, I like the approach to proportional representation, number one.
Right.
And number two, I think that anyone who's going to offer for office, whether it's at the municipal level, particularly at the provincial level and at the federal level, you should have to go in and sign up for a course that starts, I don't know, 6 months before an anticipated election, and go through a basic course in training you for the level of politics that you are going to try and become involved in, so that you come out knowing, and you can hit the ground, not running, but at least walking instead of sort of crawling on your hands and knees. Mm-hmm. If you're elected, you're successful. That also shows your commitment to what you're doing. Right. And you should have some kind of a deposit, I think, at the federal level, $1,000, maybe at the provincial level, $500, and at the municipal level, $150, $200, something like that. And it's refundable if you reach a certain percentage of votes cast. And if you don't, then you don't get your money back. And that, I think, will weed out some of the yahoos, or the thrill seekers, the egotistical types who think that they're all that and the $5 bill, and they're not.
Well, Gary, I mean, doesn't this kind of err on the side of civil disobedience? I mean, it's right on the line if you really think about it, because you are inconveniencing a lot of people in terms of them conducting their right as citizens of Canada to vote in our election. It's a disruption of the elections. How different is that than somebody standing outside and preventing people from going in to vote? Civil disobedience, as far as I'm concerned. So the other question I ask is, I understand there are certain laws in terms of who's allowed to elect, and obviously, who's allowed to put their names on the ballots. And obviously, they did not break any laws. No laws are broken with all those names placed on the ballots. So you look at how Elections Canada is conducting these elections. There should be some sort of a criteria to allow a name to be part of a ballot that that lets the voters know that these are serious people. The examples that you set forth in terms of a deposit being put down is one way to do that. But a protest group, they can raise $50, $100, whatever, and still do the same thing. I think they can sharpen the laws, or am I wrong on that?
Well, the other side of it is, though, remember, I said they also must go through a course and
I see.
An exam and come out, and the passing grade can be 75%. God, that's too low. 85%, 80 or 85%. And you know that they're committed and serious to that point, because how many people, especially at the municipal level, will walk in, and there are a couple of people here who will attest to this. You see in the comments, and we'll get to those comments in a moment. But how many people walk into the municipal level and all they know about municipal politics, they've never graced the council chamber, not once. They may have taught a little bit on the local community channel for about 5 minutes. That's it. But they walk in and they think like, oh yeah, this is easy. They have no idea about, the acts that have to be followed and all of the bylaws and everything else, and the procedures that must be followed for rezonings and development permits and all of this sort of thing. And they're just gobsmacked. 4 years, like I know in New Brunswick, it's a 4-year term for municipal politics. It used to be 3.
Right.
And, a lot of people were really by the 3rd year, and some of them now, even on the council, by the 4th year have not caught on, quite frankly. But, just kind of getting their stride, and then they're going to drop out anyway because it was too much work. Let's catch up on a couple of comments. Why is the ballot that long? Because we have 91 people registered as candidates, and under the Act, they all have to be on the ballot. So it's pretty tough. I remember we had one in St. John, New Brunswick, many, many, many years ago that was maybe a foot long. And at that time, everything was counted by hand too.
And this was on Pierre Poilievre's district, right? That was in his electorate?
This is in his riding this time around. Okay, let's go to a couple of more comments too, because we've got some more coming in here. I'm going to start at the top. There we go. And Gregory Z, hello from Rothsay, beautiful Rothsay, gateway to St. John, New Brunswick. And Greg's a former councillor before amalgamation out there. There were 6 municipalities all sitting side by each. None of them really got along with one another. And anyway, there was a whole other story there, but Greg's one of the good ones. And
did you get into a fight with him, Gary, or you're saying you didn't get along? Okay.
No, we were on the same page pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, we were reaching hands across the borders to move forward and keep things on a civil note. Anyway,
nice.
Greg has some experience in this. I'm sure there are a few stories he could tell as well. Let's see now. Angelica, oh, okay. We went back. Where is she? Oh, here we go. There we go. Hey, gentlemen, shout out to Eddie's awesome shirt. And that is one long ballot. Yes, it is. Okay, and Jim Hennessy, down to St. John, New Brunswick we go. Have a great program, gentlemen. He always gets in with that Go Habs, Eddie, for you.
Smart guy.
Okay. All right. Let's move along here. So, really, I think one thing that once we get this election out of the way, that we have to do, it has to happen, is we have to move forward with electoral reform. There's no two ways about it. This kind of
Agreed.
foolishness, and we're not giving in to them. It's something that should have been done 10 years ago or even before that.
Mm-hmm.
The way the seats are divided up, and you have vote-rich Ontario, seat-rich Ontario. You have seat-rich Quebec.
Yeah.
And then from there it kind of starts dropping off. And yes, the Conservatives have a seat of power in the West, in the three prairie provinces in particular, and they're not doing so bad in British Columbia. Thank you very much. This trip around.
Yeah.
But the number of seats, they could win every seat out there and still not form government.
Yeah.
And then when you start looking at things like that, and you look at how resource rich Western Canada is, and how, they're feeling used in a lot of ways, like, okay, keep those transfer payments flowing east.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're not getting a whole lot of say on a proportional basis as to Ontario and Quebec.
And then you can understand the discontent, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, when I had the opportunity to live in British Columbia for 2 years, and I really very quickly learned why they felt that way. There was one federal election. We were all set up to do our election coverage. Polls closed at 8:00 BC time, which would be midnight back in Atlantic Canada and 11:00 here. But here's the thing, Eddie, like, I'm just going on the air. I don't even have my intro finished, haven't even introduced my guest commentators, and we get a bulletin, majority Liberal government elected.
The media declares the winner before the race is even half over. I get it. That's frustrating for me to watch as well, being in Eastern Canada. Imagine that.
So there we are. Our votes are just starting to be counted, and the game's over. We're not really contributing to the totals. We contribute to the seat count to a degree, but we're not contributing to that overall feeling of win. We're just electing our local representatives
or feeling of inclusion in the election as well, right?
Yeah.
I get that.
And here's the other thing, that this was back in 1998, 99, 2000, in that time frame. I had Bell Satellite at my apartment, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm watching back east feeds, and they just start going blank, 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 blank. They had to cut all of the feeds from Eastern Canada as the polls closed,
right,
going west, so that they could not reinstall those feeds until polls closed in your particular Western province, so as not to influence the vote. I guess they felt that we were all stupid and that we couldn't think for ourselves and think, oh, well, I might as well vote Liberal because the Liberals are winning. No, like, we're not all stupid and just kind of follow along. But that's how I felt. So you get an understanding for the Western alienation. You really do.
Well, I mean, we're speaking about electoral reform here, and goes back to Election Canada, and nothing's really been done the last 10 years. On top of controlling the idiocy that goes in the ballots, as you just demonstrated, they have to reform in terms of electorates and seats by population, which is something I'd like to see as well. And then by the same token, you tell me, I mean, you've been on panels that have covered elections before. Look, you know what? Elections are a big bread and butter in terms of advertising for media right across the country, right? What do you think would happen should the government, or as part of the electoral reform, ban the publication of where we stand as soon as polling stations close to start broadcasting those results? I'm not saying stop it completely. I'm basically saying until the last polling office closes out in Vancouver Island someplace, that, pass a law that it can't be broadcast anywhere until the voting process is finished across the country, and then have at it. Go ahead and publish it. I know that would be a huge impact on revenue streams for your CTVs and your CBCs and local media, because they really can cover the election with what people want to see, action and who's leading the horse race. So what do you think about that? I mean, that's what's in my head. Do not broadcast results until the last polling station is closed, and then have at it.
Well, that's essentially what they were doing when they cut off the TV feeds from Eastern Canada until the polls closed in your area of Western Canada. However, at that time, there was this thing that was starting to come into its own, and there was one election before that federal election I'm talking about, where somebody went on the internet and started posting results all across the country and around the world. And he was charged under the Elections Act at the time. And I can't remember the exact outcome, but it didn't stop him, because the next election, which was the one I was talking about, he was doing it again, and you could see more people doing it as well. And so, you have, like I say, this thing called the internet. What are we going to do? Shut down the internet as well?
How about cutting it off at the source? Make it unlawful for polling counts to be communicated to anyone until they're basically told to do it, right? I mean, somebody's got to count these ballots, and whoever is summarizing these ballots and entering them in some system or whatever the case is, it would be forbidden or against the law for any of this to be communicated with the outside world. Make it the biggest secret in Canada. So have CSIS run it. I don't know, but just, hold the information, withhold it until the last polling station closes. That'll prevent any sort of publications on social media, and it'll certainly stop mainstream media from showing it as well. They'll have to show something else on television, like maybe a hockey game, No, but I'm just thinking out loud here, Gary. It just makes no sense to me. And you know what? If I was out west along with you, I would have been pissed as well.
Yeah,
having to deal with this election in and election out, right?
Let me counter that a little bit in the fact that you shut down the internet, but then you still have phone with text messages. And have you ever known anything related to politics to be locked down 100%? Somebody's going to leak somewhere along the way, and it's out there. And then, you have fine examples south of the border, where once again we have the defense secretary in chat with his brother or brother-in-law and his wife
and his lawyer.
Really? Top secret information?
Oh, but it's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
No, but you get the point. I mean, both you and I agree. We're in agreement on this, right?
Yeah. Only coming at it from different angles. But like I say, I go back to it. In some respects, it's an insult to my intelligence to think that I'm going to change the way I'm going to vote just because I know what's happening back east. Because my focus usually is first on the person who's going to be representing my riding. And then I, fall back to, the party that he or she is affiliated with, and what that party is standing for and what that leader is like. But I focus on the home base first. Now, this election, it's a whole different kettle of fish. It's completely different. And this one, as most Canadians, we're focusing on the leader first.
Yeah.
And then the platforms, and then the local candidates. And, you know, when you look.
Well, I mean, there was what, 7 million? There was what, 7 million of us that already hit the advanced polls? Wow. I don't think it's people just trying to avoid the polling lines. I think that this election is so important to a lot of people for a variety of reasons that we're showing up in record droves. And I really hope come election night, the polling stations are going to have the same problem with lineups outside. That shows how committed Canadians are this time around in using our civil rights and our duties as citizens to actually vote. And we are all voting for something extremely important, which is Canada itself. We really are voting for Canada itself this time.
Absolutely. And it would be great to see the final outcome that we have somewhere around 85% of the registered voters who actually went out and cast a ballot. That would be so good to see.
Are you aware of what the record has been for Canada? No.
No, I can find out, but you know, in the last number of years, you're lucky to get between 60 and 69% of the people out. Right across, whether you're talking municipal, provincial, or federal. It really dropped off. But you know what? If we have a good turnout and having over 7 million out voting over the 4 days of a long weekend, then the other thing that does is it sends a pretty strong message to our friend in the White House as well, that, you know what, when Canadians say elbow down, we damn well mean it.
They're not kidding. Yeah, we're not kidding.
Yep. Don't mess with us. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see if whoever forms the next government picks up on this whole aspect, and we move forward this time with electoral reform as a top item, priority item. Amongst everything else, there are a lot of other things in there, but I really think that this is key, and that we also, for God's sakes, get the federal government into at least the 20th century with using technology and how it communicates with its citizens, the taxpayers, and in the way we can vote. Whether, you know, we have the opportunity to be able to vote online, and I've heard all of the arguments about, you know, the security and everything else and blah, blah, blah. Well, how many ballot boxes have gone missing, or keys gone missing for the locks on the ballot boxes, and you know, oh, look what we found 3 weeks later, a ballot box that hadn't been counted. Yeah,
right.
You know what? Yes, there are security issues. There's security issues in everything we touch. You think there wasn't a security issue down south with Mr. Musk and his resources? Come on. Exactly. You know? You think there are not security issues with foreign involvement in our election? True. Very true. Thumbing through Bookface and Twit and the rest of them. And you'll see prime examples. Right. Well, you know what? I mean, just one final comment on the electoral reform. I mean, I agree 100% with you. I hope the next elected government is going to put this on top of the list in terms of priorities and get electoral reform to ensure there's proper representation in the House of Commons across the entire population and not just pockets of population. What I'm actually hoping for, if this actually goes through and passes through, where we actually perpetuate electoral reform in Canada, that some of the provinces will follow suit. As you know, here in Quebec, there's more power out in la région of Quebec, of la belle province, than there is in metropolitan areas like Quebec City and Montreal. So I agree with it 100% in terms of representation by population, as opposed to just
purely regional, and it's very, very difficult to crack that nut because that's where the electoral power is, out in the regions. So you need somewhere for an example to be set, and then pressure from the provincial level to reform as well.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, coming up, how much will it cost you to have one of the parties buy your vote? We hope you are enjoying our streams and the discussions that take place. If you feel so inclined, you can buy us a coffee. Simply scan the QR code with your phone for the link, or check the link in the description below. And I thank you for your support. Well, now, it's time for promises with a price tag. Monday is election day. Both the Liberals and the Conservatives finally released their caustic campaign promises. First, let's look at the promises. Okay, so let's bring those up. This is a graphic, and it's a summary of the campaign platforms, really. We didn't hit everything, but we hit, I think, some of the highlights. We'll start with the Liberals. 1% cut to the lowest tax bracket, which will mean up to $825 in savings per dual income family. Double housing construction to 500,000 new homes per year. Maintain the $10 a day national child care program. Balance oil and gas with clean tech, and cut permit wait to 2 years. Wait, what? 2 years? When I saw that today, I'm thinking, dear God, it's taking more than 2 years to get a project permitted in this country. And I know Christian has mentioned that in talking about some of the mining projects that are on the boards, about how long it takes to get a permit. So that's a lofty goal, 2 years, but why not just make it 1 year? Because we need to get some of these things rolling. Raise
right away, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Raise defense spending above NATO's 2% of GDP target. $5 billion trade diversification fund, job creation through infrastructure and export opportunities. And reduce the deficit from 1.96% to 1.35% of GDP by 2028 to 2029 fiscal year, and hold transfers steady. Therefore, Mark Carney, if he forms government, that one is going to prove to be a real thorn in his side, because you're not going to tell me for 1 second that the provinces will not be knocking on the door of a new government and looking for more. The hands will be like this. We need more in transfer payments. We need more for health care. We need more for this. You watch. That's not going to...
But the thing is, I think both you and I are all for that, as long as we have some sort of KPIs that actively measure what that particular government is using the money for. So if it's earmarked for healthcare, I don't want that going to the language police here in Quebec. You know what I mean? Like seriously speaking, if the money is earmarked for a particular program, you have to demonstrate that that's where it's going, or else there are penalties, fiscal penalties to have to account for, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that at the healthcare and the education levels, and yeah, there has to be better accountability. But before we throw any more money at the healthcare system, the federal government has to step in and say, we're doing a complete audit of every system across the country. Because we do not feel that we are getting the best return on investment for the money we are spending on healthcare systems. And we're just not going to throw more money at it, because the problem doesn't get fixed. It doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, in a lot of cases, it gets worse because the money's redirected to some other foolish thing. And I remember, again, being out in BC with the NDP government of Glenn Clark, who didn't want to lose union support. So every time a school board or the local health authorities wanted more money, the union types would threaten to go out on strike, and Clark would dig in and just hand over money with no accountability whatsoever. And
Right.
in the 2 years I was there, with the money that was thrown, especially at healthcare in that province, they should have had the top healthcare system in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't, because the money just was absorbed into that great gaping hole known as their general revenue account.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like that really gets me going. But anyway, I'll get away from that now. Let's go to the Conservatives.
All right.
Dropped lowest bracket from 15% to 12.75%, approximately $1,800 in savings per dual income family. Remove GST on new homes less than 1.3 million in cost. Fast track local approvals. And he has a whole bunch of things lined up for fast tracking local approvals, incentives for municipalities to move these things along in a hurry. Scrap carbon pricing for consumers, industry, and expand clean tech tax credits. Okay. No explicit defense spending increase noted. I know he was talking about a new base in the Northwest Territories, but beyond that, I haven't heard a whole lot either as to. Seems to me he was in Halifax a while ago, and he did commit to, I believe it was naval patrol vessels or
yeah, for our northern borders. Yeah. Besides that, Gary, I agree. I haven't heard very much from him in terms of national defense.
Now, I know when he did his campaign rollout or the platform rollout over the weekend, he did delve into increasing benefits and accessibility to medical treatments and things for veterans, which is full marks there on that one for sure. Expand skilled trades training, boost direct trade friendly tax policy. Okay. Cut deficit without cutting services, shrink the federal bureaucracy. And in the summary of Carney's take on the reducing the deficit, didn't really, holding transfer steady, but didn't really get into real details, but there was some talk about working on the size of the public service, as and that's the first thing that Poilievre's talking about here is shrink the federal bureaucracy, which has mushroomed in size. It started just prior to the pandemic, went out of control during the pandemic. Oh, well, we need more help, blah, blah, blah. Well, services never improved. And then most of these people that were hired temporarily are still temporarily
there. Yeah.
And doing what? Finally, Service Canada has come out with a private sector kind of promise of performance, in the fact that if you apply for your passport and you don't receive it in 30 days, you get it free. Finally, because how many months have we gone with all kinds of delays in getting a passport renewal, getting a new passport, and all kinds of excuses, and no work, no results.
Yeah.
But every one of these promises carry a price tag somewhere. And I was watching an economist the other day, and he said they can, especially on the bottom line here, they can talk about, we're going to increasing revenue by promoting this or promoting that, and we're going to cut taxes here or there. But those numbers never really materialize because there are all sorts of other things. They're kind of like some of the candidates on that meter-long ballot. They're ghosts.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Well, Poilievre's last statement is pretty much something that all political parties will put on their platform: cutting deficits without cutting services. I can't remember the last time I saw a politician not say that. So it's a moot discussion point. And at the end of the day, both you and I, as consumers or citizens in Canada, tax-paying citizens, don't really ever see any benefit from that and have absolutely zero idea whether it's happening or not. Usually not, because when you're looking at the deficit report at the end of every year, when the budget comes out, the budget report, the deficit keeps on creeping up. So what happened to the cost cutting measures, right? So I don't know, Gary. It's the government bodies around Canada, United States, the rest of the world just. It's an amazing thing. Sometimes it's just a darn black hole, right? You and I can just look at it as a darn black hole. So, look, albeit to say, both candidates had some solid points. They made solid points with their platform releases, although the Conservatives, I thought, were somewhat late after the ballots had opened up in terms of voting stations this weekend. But they all pretty much come out with the same thing 80% of the time, with a smattering of 20% of different elements that they propose on doing, right? So, like you were saying, this particular election is based on not so much as the party, but a lot of decisions are based on the leader themselves. Whether it's Mr. Singh, Mr. Poilievre, or Prime Minister Carney, a lot of it is going to be based on character. And then the platform becomes very important, and we'll make a decision based on both, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we voted. Actually, Deborah and I and Jen walked up on Saturday around supper time.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, and at that point, it wasn't overly busy. There were, there was a bit of a line, but not anything out of the ordinary. And it was steady. That's one thing I will say. They were telling me that on Friday that people were waiting. They were lined up outside and waiting about an hour and a half. And
yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, Friday seemed to be the day where we had the long lineups. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know, Eddie, too, if it's important, people wanted to take advantage of, the time that they had over the long weekend, the Easter weekend, to maybe take a few minutes to go and vote because they felt it was important. But I think you're probably going to see more and more a shift to people voting earlier, just, doing it, and then they know it's done, it's over with. So when you think about it, Poilievre didn't release his platform, his caustic platform,
until yesterday, Tuesday. That is kind of late.
And Carney was on the weekend, But in some cases, how much at this stage of the game, how much of an impact does the release of that platform and cost platform really have on the average person?
Well, maybe if it was released earlier, maybe prior to the debate, maybe on purpose they didn't release it on debate because during the debate, prior to the debate, because it wouldn't have been a topic point during the debate. So strategically, all parties said, "Oh, we're going to do this later," and maybe all of this has been thrown up in flux, Gary, because of the snap election call, right? Typically, there's more time to prepare for an upcoming election, so you have your staff already preparing your platform. So once the election is announced, you can communicate your platform to the citizens of Canada. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot of time this time around, right? Everything was done in, I'm not going to say in haste. We have a certain time frame in terms of how long an election can last, but it was a snap election. Even though Mr. Trudeau resigned a few months ago, it's still pretty snappy if you want to put it right. Otherwise, the election would have happened if Trudeau stayed on board, November of this year. That would have
scheduled for October.
October, right?
Yeah, but he wouldn't have made it past.
No, I get that, but the point I'm trying to make is that all political parties would have had up until October, knowing it was happening in October, to prepare for absolutely everything they might have to contend with from in the election, including communicating the platform to its citizens. Maybe it was done post haste, and there you go, people. I know it's a little late, but there it is, right? That's the feeling I get from this.
Just a quick note, Polyev says the Conservative platform will also save Canadians more than $56 billion between 2025 and 2029. Putting in place their programs will also require the Conservative government to carry a projected deficit of $31 billion this year. So, you know, we're looking at the deficit financing all the way around. Like there's no, it's all in the red. There's no black.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So let's have a quick look too. Where did he go? I just had the latest polling, because I think we should be keeping an eye on that at this stage. But it seems to me when I looked last, let's see if I can find it here.
It bounces every day, doesn't it?
Yeah, up and down a bit. But the Liberals still maintaining 5 points over the Conservatives.
5 points.
Yeah. The Liberals picked up 0.9%. The Conservatives, their base popped up 1.5%. The Dippers are down 2.8%. They're down to 7.7%.
Yeah. And the Dippers were actually double digit not too long after the debate last week, right? And then they just drop right down again.
Yeah. And somebody said today, I thought I heard this on one of the news channels were going in the background while I was working, that Singh may be in third place in his riding.
Oh.
And I've heard Tom Mulcair say that he's been hearing that Francois Blanchette is in trouble as well in his riding. Speaking of the Bloc, they're down 0.4%. They're sitting at 5.4%. The Green, they're up 0.7% at 3.4%. And the People's Party of Canada, why is that even there?
Yeah.
Really? 0.9%, and that's up 0.1%. Like, why?
Yeah. Well, Thomas Mulcair was also saying that if Mr. Singh does not have a resounding win, at least within the seats that he has right now, that he will not be the leader of the NDP coming up to the next election for sure.
He probably,
or let alone this year. He'll be gone this year.
Sorry. He'd be lucky to survive this year.
Yeah.
He'd be lucky to survive next month if he gets blasted out and the NDP lose some of those key seats.
Is that a message for Mr. Mulcair to rejoin politics?
One never knows, does
one? Well, you and I have talked about this over coffee from time to time, that, maybe he's right now a prime minister that never was, considering, the status of the NDP, what Canadians are looking for, a good balance between the Reds and the Blues. And you know what? He might make a splash out of this whole thing if he makes a decision to return to politics.
I think he's having too much fun, though, doing his
his op-eds,
and his editorial op-ed pieces and everything. He's having a
very well-spoken man.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Love the panels that he's on. I love when CTV has, in through the afternoon and cutting in and giving his thoughts on whatever it is at the time.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with him at some point. So, yeah, you never know. You never, ever know. And here's the other thing. If I'm Pierre Poilievre, knowing the history of the Tories, I'd be looking over my back and over my shoulder now, watching for the blue knives coming for my back. This was the prime minister in waiting
Yeah.
4 months ago. Double-digit lead. And now?
Gary, I think in October or end of September in one of our shows, both you and I think said that, yeah, he's probably going to be the next prime minister of Canada. I think it was October sometime. Wow, what a change. Unreal.
Blanchette was on the verge of being the opposition.
Opposition leader on top of that, yes.
Yeah. So, wow, did things ever change? Yeah. Trudeau was gone. They probably were preparing for that aspect. But again, the person who shall remain nameless in the White House kind of threw a complete monkey wrench into a lot of things, including the political scene here.
Yeah,
but still,
true.
When you look at Poilievre's, the perception that people have of Poilievre, as far as leaders, concerned, he's really trailing Carney as far as the preferred prime minister.
Prime minister, yes.
And again, I think, and I'm hearing more of this kind of conversation that you and I started talking about when we first started the show back in September, and that is he's got to get away from the attacks and the slogans and everything else.
Yeah.
Start acting like a prime minister in waiting. He didn't.
And especially when he had the largest audience at his feet during the two debates, especially in the English debate, Gary. I mean, both you and I saw it. It was nonstop. Oh, last 10 years. Oh, you're like Mr. Trudeau and yada. It was nonstop. And as someone who hadn't decided who he was going to vote for that particular moment, just seeing him with the same old Pierre Poilievre, as opposed to speaking to the people about what he's going to do to make this country better, was just constant attacks. So you know what? He screwed that one up royally, for me at least, and I think a lot of folks would agree with me that he didn't come out on the winning side of that particular debate. If you want to pick a winner, he didn't do himself any favors, and shame on his campaign management team in not directing him away from that. No, unless he chose not to follow their guidance, their guidelines. It was a big failure. He just didn't do himself any favors. You know, you're always saying, will the real Mr. Carney stand up, and will the real Mr. Poilievre stand up? I think we saw the real Mr. Poilievre stand up, and not in a good way, the last debate.
Except at the very end, when he was talking about meeting people and kind of got emotional, he showed a little bit of emotion.
He showed us humanity for the first time in that entire debate.
The Conservatives did not jump on that. Like, I didn't even really see any shorts or reels of that moment on social media. Why they didn't pick up on that? Because even a lot of the pundits thought that they would pick up on that. And what are they doing instead? They're rolling out Stephen Harper in an ad endorsing Poilievre and using the line that he used at one of the rallies. Both of these guys worked for me at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But he's sitting there behind the desk, and there's. I think there are two other ads that are running now for the Conservatives, and Poilievre is not there. They're just people on screen are endorsing him.
I think you're right. The Blues are going to come out with their knives after this.
Oh, listen, the Tories are notorious for getting the long knives out, and they're on the losing side. And look at the last 2 to 3 leaders. Oh,
yeah.
So. It's not like they're not experienced at doing this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming up, Snowbirds flying north for the final time, and an update on the NHL playoffs, including Eddie's favorite, the Habs. First, a reminder, if you are enjoying the stream, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It really does have an impact on the growth of the channel, and we want to share more points of view. And don't forget to comment if you are watching live, or later if you are watching the replay. And we thank you very much for that support to help the channel grow. Well, you know, what is it? Spread your tiny wings and fly away, blah, blah, blah. Snowbird, Anne Murray. I forget how that goes, thank God. Because if you recall, when the Canadian content regulations first came into radio and TV, especially radio, there wasn't a whole lot of Canadian content for music.
Mm-hmm.
And Snowbird got played over and over.
And over and over again. Well, if you want, I'll come down later on and sing it to you.
No, I'll take a hard pass on that. Thank you very much.
It'll start raining if I start singing to you.
Anyway, more and more Canadians are cutting their ties with what used to be their winter escape to sunshine states like Florida and Arizona. Yes, the low Canadian dollar is a contributing factor, but a lot of these same snowbirds have lived through fluctuations in the exchange rate for years as they soaked up the sun in the middle of winter back home, lucky buggers. The final straw appears to be, though, the changing political climate in the U.S. with the current president's election win last November and his dictatorial style of government, not to mention trade wars, threat of annexation, and, well, you know the rest. Yeah. More of the snowbirds say they no longer feel safe and welcome in some areas. They're also being shunned by the locals. I just happened to be browsing through Facebook this morning, and a person I know in the Moncton area brought up a couple of points about the political climate in the U.S., and it was interesting to read a number of comments because he has a home in Florida, condo, and he was talking to the agent that handles sales at that building or complex, whatever it is. And the agent was telling him that the number of Canadians that are selling and leaving, he said it's phenomenal. Now, some of them are saying, more than anything, it's the exchange rate. But again, I argue that you've been through this before and you've managed to hang on. A lot of them are saying, it's the exchange rate, but more and more they're feeling uncomfortable and not safe. And I know two people that I've worked with closely who each had homes in Florida. And one sold his place 2 years ago. And he was telling me the change that had taken place in the complex and how they would just go out and just kind of sit in a corner where nobody could see them of their yard because they did not want to get involved in the conversations. And they had a lot of MAGA types in the area, and they're all packing.
Yeah. Well, it's my wife and I had we were in Florida in January. We had some commitments there, and we went to visit friends of ours who have a wonderful home in a really nice trailer park in Okeechobee, Florida. And my wife and I didn't feel comfortable going in to begin with, but they were our friends. We were staying with them. What really shocked us is our friends actually warned us against any discussions about politics because everyone there was very, very, very pro-Trump and very pro-MAGA, not to start any conflicts while we were there. Well, first of all, we were kind of taken aback by that. I mean, we're grown adults. We know how to handle ourselves. But by the same token, they're right. It's very difficult to have any sort of conversations with individuals without having that elephant in the room, So I didn't feel comfortable there. Neither did my wife, and we only stayed one night as a result of that, and it's rather unfortunate. And you know what? Being newly retired, my wife and I were planning to be snowbirds. It's not going to happen in the United States of America. It might have happened in the United States of America if he shall remain nameless did not become elected, but more so the rhetoric of annexation and the tariffs trying to destroy our economy up here and destroy our sovereignty. No, thank you. This is one Canadian that's not going to be spending a penny for at least the next 4 years in the United States of America. And I know a lot of people that share that same feeling, avoiding travel in the States. I mean, I'm an avid cruiser. I will no longer set foot on a ship that's run by an American company, which is unfortunate. I mean, I truly have nothing against the citizens of the United States. It's just what it's turning into. I don't feel good about. So, everything you're saying about the snowbirds, I can relate to that, actually.
Well, and who wants to spend money in a country and help fund a government that treats you like you're some kind of criminal and really an enemy, and that they feel they can just walk in at any time and take over your country and whatever rights you have?
True. Absolutely.
Gone. Because right now, it seems like every other day, Americans are losing another piece of freedom or rights. And you have an administration where the law means nothing. They don't even listen to the court rulings now. They're just brushing them aside.
Mm-hmm.
Just brushing them aside. Just even knowing that, without even coming in contact with anyone, if you stayed inside your condo in Florida or Arizona for the 3, 4, 5 months you're there, like, how does it feel knowing that really there's a growing level of lawlessness?
Yeah.
Starting at the top and filtering down through, where normally it would start on the streets and work its way up.
Mm-hmm.
But this is in the White House, the Oval Office, a convicted felon holding the office of president.
Yeah.
The defense secretary, where every time you happen to see something on social media, is questioning his sobriety, as he's on Fox News and making other appearances, not to mention playing the signal. It's like a kid
right.
playing a toy, and unveiling all kinds of secret information. The sad part about it is, Eddie, like, remember there was a period back, just after the market crash in 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
You could pick up some property in Florida dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And I just hope that a lot of the Canadians who are selling now, or trying to sell, manage to pick up their property back then, so that they're not losing a lot of money or walking away and leaving a chunk of money on the table.
Markets are saturated. I read this a few months back when Trump got elected. Already then, a couple of like in December, there were real estate agents in some of the hot spots, Hallandale, Hollywood, Florida, next to Fort Lauderdale, and an entire region of Florida. The market just very quickly started to get saturated. There was also the question of insurance, hurricane insurance, and whatnot, which is contributing to that. But most of the homes that have been put up for sale is not from the American citizen. It's from the expat community. They're the ones who are basically saying, I'm out of here. So it's a combination of things. But I think what pushed the rock over the edge was the election of President Trump. That's what pushed people over the edge, I think. And you're absolutely right. We've had, I traveled down to the United States when the Canadian dollar was at 65, 66 cents. It is what it is. So people have survived that. But it's just more than just the exchange rate. You know what? I'm constantly seeing things, and states like Maine, states like Vermont, places like Upper New York, they're already begging Canadians to come visit their states. 70% booking cancellations for this summer. I mean, these communities close to the Canadian border, they're just going to close up and just they're going to turn into dust towns. And I really feel sorry for those hardworking individuals that just want to make a living, and they just happen to build a business around Canadians crossing the border, which is just not happening the way it used to, And I do feel sorry for them, but you know what? You live in the United States of America. I live in Canada, and this, as a person up here who loves the people of the United States, your government has basically declared war on Canada. So I'm sorry. I feel bad for you, but that's the way it is up here. Elbows up, right?
Yep. And the other side of it is you have a feeling for the Canadians who are losing their jobs because of the tariffs and the threat of tariffs, and there's that side of it. Yeah, okay. There's collateral damage south of the border, but that's not our problem. That's the guy in the White House. That's his problem, and those people should be just hammering the White House, just in a fit of rage, because it's him who is choking you off and, caused us to throw up the barriers, period. And Poilievre, in announcing his campaign the other day, was talking about even upping border security with towers and everything. You know what? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because the first thing is, we have more guns and drugs coming in from the U.S., crossing our border, coming into Canada.
By far.
Yeah. Than what fentanyl was crossing from Canada into the U.S. And here's the thing that gets lost in the conversation every freaking time. And that is, it's not our border. Well, yes, okay, maybe at the point of entry in where the containers are unloaded, you're not going to catch everything. And on the other side, it's up to your border patrol guards at the border to be much more vigilant in stopping that flow from getting into your country in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like that guy is just living in some kind of fantasy land that changes every 5 seconds. And anyway.
That's a whole other 5 shows, Gary.
Yep. You know what? You're stuck with him. And too bad.
Yeah.
I'm at war. There's collateral damage, but I just brush it off. As long as we're doing okay here in Canada, so be it. Anyway, maybe you should wind me down,
Eddie. Yeah. No, I'm. You know what? I'm feeling it. I tell you, when we were, like I said, when we were in Florida in January. How you're feeling right now and seething, it's exactly the way my wife and I felt when we were in Florida. We just couldn't get away from there any quicker. I feel bad for you, but sorry, too bad, your problem. Yep. Your countrymen voted this clown into power, so now you're going to have to deal with him. What else can I say?
Yep, exactly. Manel says, "Oh, and please don't forget the head of Homeland Security had her purse stolen."
That's a good one. Oh.
That's just one of many things.
Ooh. That's a nice one. I like that.
Jeez. Okay, where am I now? Oh, yeah. Okay. Look back here. And why don't we do this? Coming up, Eddie updates the NHL playoff picture, and of course, with special attention to his Habs. It's elbows up time, and not just on the ice. We've
elbows up time
to support Canadian companies as we deal with the ongoing trade war and more threats. Now, one way of supporting a Canadian company is moving your domain and web page hosting from one of those American guys to a Canadian option. Web Hosting Canada, WHC, is a Montreal-based company specializing in all of those services with an expanding network of servers across the country. And all of those servers are subject to Canadian privacy and security laws only. Interested? There's an affiliate link in the description below. Have a click and see what you think. But I'll tell you one thing, I moved my stuff over 4 years ago when we first came to Montreal, and I've had great service with them ever since. Okay, well now, we're into the playoff pulse. The first round of the NHL playoffs underway with good Canadian representation this year. Eddie is following our hometown squad along with the others. Eddie?
Well, let me keep the best for last, being the Montreal Canadiens, right? No, but first of all, Gary, the plug you just made to move our domain business from American interest to Canadian, I think that was an awesome plug. Thank you for that. I really love it when you bring those up. So good stuff on that. So where are we? Yes, we've got quite a few Canadian teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and round one is well underway. And as expected, Winnipeg St. Louis series, we expected Winnipeg, the President's Trophy winners, being the top team in the NHL after the regular season. They have a 2-0 lead over the St. Louis Blues, and they will be playing tomorrow night. The other Canadian team of significant interest is last year's Stanley Cup finalists out of Edmonton. The first two periods didn't look too good for them. They were down 4-0, and then I don't know what happened to Connor McDavid. He was demon possessed on the ice. He actually put the team on its back, picked up 4 points, and they tied the game 5-5. Believe it or not, down for a 4-0 deficit against Los Angeles. And Los Angeles scored in the third period with 42 seconds left in the game. What a letdown after that kind of a comeback. And get this, I always say about former Montreal Canadiens doing well in other teams, Mr. Philippe Dagneau, former center of the Montreal Canadiens, scored the overtime goal. Go Habs go, even in other cities. So Edmonton plays tonight, as a matter of fact, in Los Angeles. The other series of particular interest with two Canadian teams going at it is the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Your Toronto Maple Leafs, Gary, I'm happy to report, are up 2-0. You know what? Last night's game went into overtime. Ottawa was down 2-0. They tied the game 2-2. And again, another former Montreal Canadian who's doing better on another team is former Hab Max Domi, scored in overtime last night for Toronto. So Toronto has a 2-0 lead in that particular series. And Gary, there are reports of people wearing tinfoil Stanley Cup caps walking down Yonge Street in Toronto. So they're just waiting and chomping at the bit and getting ready for that Stanley Cup parade. So I'm all for them. I do really wish they advanced to the next, at least to the next round. I'm sorry, I have to jab. It's Toronto, right? And last but not least, my friend, the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals. You know what? I watched that first period a couple of nights ago, and the little Montreal Canadiens were just getting steamrolled by the much taller and much larger Washington Capitals. They're giving up 3 inches to 20 pounds on the ice at any given moment. So, Montreal Canadiens are year 3 of year 5, I believe, of rebuilding. And, I'm sure that the Canadiens management are looking at beefing up that team because come playoff time, I've said it before, size and the big boys that come out to play, they come out to play serious. So the Washington Capitals manhandled the Canadiens in the first period, and one captain being Alex Ovechkin colliding with Cole Caulfield, the Montreal Canadiens. Poor kid just went flying 20 feet when he nailed them. But you know what? Credit to the Habs, which has been something of their defining character this year. They never give up. They were down 2-0. They scored 2 nice goals in the third period, and brought it into overtime. And it was a real good game to watch. Let's say the second half, where the Canadiens actually picked up. not that they were hitting more, but they seemed a lot faster than the bigger, tougher Washington Capitals. And of course, the king of goal scoring, Alex Ovechkin, scored in the regular during I think it was the second period he scored or something like that. He scored the overtime winner, so good for him. The Canadians were in it neck and neck, and you know what? They play tonight. I certainly hope that they'll be a little tougher in terms of competing for the puck in the corners against the much larger Washington Capitals team. So you know what? Go Habs, go! They got to at least win one in Washington and bring it back here. And Gary, as you know, the Bell Center is just a couple of blocks up here from us. I think you and I are going to go take a walk up there when they play their game, just to soak in the atmosphere here. And there is no city in the National Hockey League that throws a bigger party outside the Bell Center than for the faithful of the Montreal Canadiens. So you know what? The Canadian teams are all in there. You know, I really love what Winnipeg is doing. I love what Toronto is doing so far, and we're going to see what happens with the Habs Habs and Edmonton Oilers after tonight. So I really hope we're all up there as much as possible.
All right, yeah, I'm looking forward to taking in one of the games outside. Like it is quite a spot up there. I've walked by other times, never really had the chance to go in and just sort of in that whole plaza area. Like, wow, yeah.
So go Habs, go.
Yeah. There you go. Where's your hat, by the way?
It's in the washing machine. I had it washed. It's drying right now.
I see you're getting ready.
Well, actually, what I did is I put it away. I'm just waiting for the Stanley Cup Champions version of the cap to come out, and then I'll put that one on. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can hardly wait. And with that, that's a wrap on ballots, budgets, and breakaways. Thanks for riding shotgun through Canada's wild political plays and power shifts. If you liked what you have seen and heard, hit the like button, share the stream, and drop your take in the comments below. Night Talk returns in 7 days. I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night. Good night, Eddie.
Good night, everybody.